Erev Tov Moshav Rishbon. Good morning in St. Louis. Greetings to friends of Israel around the country, around the world. It's Sunday. It is time to celebrate some Israeli successes that we have here today, just after the Ophirs, the Israeli version of the Israeli Oscars. We're here to talk film, and have we got some exciting news to share with you and some insights that'll leave you maybe excited that you still have that Netflix subscription for the coming year. So here we are, Israeli film. You have no excuse not to share your favorite Israeli film that you last saw, whether it was in Israel, whether it was at a film festival in your hometown, whether it was on Netflix or some other cable or streaming service. Let us know where you're calling in from now, what the last Israeli film that you saw that you are excited about, and talk to your friends about. Today you're going to learn about some additional films that you're going to want to share with your friends and your whole network. So what do we got for you today? Today we are have an incredible panel put together by the Backstory group with us. We're excited to introduce you to Yoram Honig. You're going to meet some of the people behind the scenes, behind the cameras, behind the control panels and the music on these incredible films. Yoram is the director of the Jerusalem Film and Television Fund. Before that, he worked on producing and directing over 70 different films for television for the past decade. He has been involved in funding and helping invest in additional 70 films. Many of them have been nominated for, including in the Oscars for Best Foreign Films. They've won grand prizes at places like Cannes Film Festival and Berlin and Tokyo Film Festivals. Indeed, it's impossible to talk about the Israeli film and television industry without thinking about the whole world, because the whole world really is interested in Israeli film. We have Gidi Dar. You may have seen a big profile on his latest film in the New York Times recently or in Variety. He is a writer and film director. He himself and the film project he will tell you about with the whole team of creative artists behind it just won last week for Ophir. So mazel tov on that, Gidi. And we're going to hear a little bit and see from this film that you have out there, and hopefully hear from you when we around the world are going to be able to watch it ourselves. It's an incredible, incredible story. There's great technology in it. And this is the kind of thing that only Israeli film industry can bring to the rest of the world at the moment, these kind of stories. Yonatan Al-Balak is a composer, a producer, an arranger, a guitarist. He's trained as a jazz musician, and it's his music and musical ideas that, particularly in animated films, but also in other films, make up that emotional connection to the film. Yonatan's on tour now in France. He's joining us from France, and we're so happy to hear about that critical element to the success of the film industry and the way in which Israeli artists are indeed contributing. The person who brought this great gang together for us today is our friend and colleague, Wendy Revelle. She's the president and executive director of Backstory Group. Prior to that, she's here somewhere around the Beltway from me in the Washington, D.C. area today. Previously worked in D.C. at Cine, C-I-N-E, a film television competition. She's brought a lot of that spirit and connective tissue to across the Atlantic, to helping connect together and tell the stories of the people really working hard to create these movies and films that are now winning prizes all over the world. She herself was once an actress in Atlanta, so she knows a little bit about telling the backstory of the people who are in front of the camera as well. So Wendy, take us behind the set. Tell us a little bit. You've been working with and about the Israeli film and television industry now for decades. Its story is starting to get told on very big stages and in very big festivals. So tell us a little bit about Backstory with a capital S and the stories that you're going to share with us today with the panel.
Thank you, Wayne. And am I recording? Am I here?
You're on.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your having us today. I'm a big fan of the programs that you do, so it's an honor to be your guest. We founded the Backstory Group in 2015 to help create a broader and more multifaceted awareness among Americans of Israeli life and culture. And we thought, and still think, that a good way to do that would be to engage and connect American and Israeli creators in the cultural and entertainment arenas. And we've done that in the past, pre-COVID, by taking television and film producers and film score composers and students in these areas on trips to Israel, where we meet with their industry peers and also with fascinating people in science and technology and so many other things that Israel is excelling in. And one of our favorite activities is to visit film and music schools, where the American and Israeli students show each other their work and discuss their work, and the producers and composers give lectures or master classes, and they too have an opportunity to see and hear the Israeli student work, which is amazing work. We've created, since COVID, a virtual version of that on the cusp, and you can check it out on our website. Also, since COVID, we've developed The Back Room, which is a program with the Jerusalem Academy of Music and Dance Masters of Composition students writing the scores for the senior capstone films of students at the University of Georgia's Grady College, 7 time zones away. It's been really successful. And one film, Maddie Otto's Hard Pill to Swallow, with music by Yaniv Karem, is in 8 international and national film festivals as a finalist or semi-finalist. And that's a big deal. So we're really, really excited about that. And we'll be continuing that with the master's program at Georgia and in some other schools as well this year. And an absolute highlight of any trip that we take is the opportunity to visit with the driving force behind so much of what's going on in Jerusalem, in the film world, and what will be going on in Jerusalem in the film world. And that is Yoram Honig of the Jerusalem Film and Television Fund. And normally we have the opportunity to visit him at the fund's home at the beautiful and historic Hanson House, where he is not today, but we hope to see him there soon. But hi, Yoram, welcome.
Hi, and thank you for arranging all this beautiful venue. Let's call it a venue today.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate you joining us. So tell us, Yoram, you are the founder of the Jerusalem Film and Television Fund. When did you found it? Why did you found it? And what does a film fund do?
Okay, I'll try to be very short because we want to be interesting. Israel, like Canada, like Europe, has a governmental support to local filmmaking. Without that, there's no commercial site for any filmmaking in Israel. We have 9 million people in Israel. Half of them don't go and see films usually. Very small crowd, and there's not a lot of tickets sold. So the government has to help. Around the world, around 20 years ago, even more, they started regional and local funds. In the US, they started most funds to attract productions for their money. You give them some kind of support, and they come and they spend the money in your state or your city, and it's good for business. In Europe, most of the funds were cultural funds, which means we only want you to come to our region and to film in our areas because it's important for tourism, for local patriotism. We don't only want to see Paris on the screen all the time. There's also, other places in France. So a lot of regional funds popped over. And in Jerusalem, there are, of course, big national funds, which are great supporters of films. But most of the film business in Israel is in Tel Aviv. Let's call Tel Aviv the LA, New York of Israel. And Jerusalem is considered, the old-fashioned town with not a lot of film business. Once there was, in the last 2 decades, there's not a lot of business in Jerusalem, but the film schools, the best film schools in Israel are located in Jerusalem. So we we came up with this idea to build this fund, the Jerusalem Film Fund, which will do both. Bring business into town in order to create jobs for young talents in order for them to stay in town. And on the other side, to deal with the cultural aspects of Jerusalem, which is usually a stereotype in everybody's mind, no matter where he comes from the world. Jerusalem means something to him, but usually it's a stereotype. Usually it's what you see on CNN. And we have that, a lot of that, but we also have, 40,000 students learning in Jerusalem and living and having a thriving cultural life and nightlife, and that wasn't on the screen. So these two main objectives, one, to bring business into Jerusalem to create jobs, and the other, to deal with Jerusalem's stereotype on the big screen.
That's great. And you've just done an amazing job with that. Let's look at the short clip that shows a little bit more specifically about what you've been up to these past 10 years. I think you started the fund 10 years ago.
Bar mitzvah we're celebrating this year, but...
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a lot more about it after we see the clip.
Really great working here, and there's obviously amazing locations. I mean, really just such special secret. I'm so interested by the secret hidden places that we got to find.
You're encouraging film production to come here, shoot in Jerusalem. Fantastic. Something very exciting is happening in Israel for film.
Yeah.
That's great. There's more to that clip. Yoram, I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Okay, can we hear you? Okay, so that's wonderful. So I see that you've supported a lot of films. Can you give us a more specific idea of what that support entails? I'm assuming there are financial incentives, but is there also you connect the production personnel with the film?
Yeah. The job that we created, because there was nothing before us in Israel, combines, most of the money goes to attract productions coming over. And we'll talk about which kinds of productions. But most of our work goes on building the ecosystem in Jerusalem, bringing together studios and students and high schools. And so what I call, we have it to the width and to the length. We have like a Hollywood Squares, but much bigger one. And on one side, we have like the ages from preschool, high school, students, academy, young, old, and all kinds of creators. And then what kind of programs we have for TV, for film, for animation, all kinds of things, gaming, VR, AR, and we suit for each one his own program and bring them all together. Students from high school get support from students from the university. So we're making like a ecosystem in Jerusalem, and that brings even more jobs and more work to the city than just giving out money.
Yes, for sure. And what you said about the film schools in Jerusalem, I have to second that. That is some of the most beautiful student work that I've ever seen, and it's consistently been remarked upon by the professionals and the students who we bring, as has the light in Jerusalem. Everybody says, I want to make a film here. I love this light. So that's very cool too. So when I met you, Yoram, in 2015, I think that was when you had just begun, well, not begun, but had sort of sealed the first deals of the animation aspect. What made you decide to bring animation to Jerusalem? Because when we think of Jerusalem, that's not the first thing that comes to the external person's mind.
Yeah. Also to my mind, my background is filmmaking.
Right.
I learned at San Spiegel Film School, and I created my own films before I directed this film. Animation for me was cartoons, not animation. Okay. But because we had a lot of success in other areas, and we said, okay, there's also Bezalel, a very big art school in Jerusalem, which has Israel's leading animation studies. Let's see what we can do for them. And we went into this area and we said, wow, I mean, how come in Israel there isn't an animation industry? I mean, this is crazy, just for us. So we checked it out, and there were a lot of tries that didn't succeed that proved the opposite, that animation can't be made in Israel. Okay? So we started, I won't tell you all of the secrets, but we juggled between what we call the neshama, the soul, our IP, our stories, but we don't have money for them, and bringing over Disney to do Baby Muppets, the top flag show of Disney in Jerusalem, spending a lot of money in Jerusalem, and us using that money to support the local animation scene. Okay, so using that, we proved to the government that with their money, the government support, we can bring a lot of money from all over the world to Jerusalem to build an animation scene, not only to be famous, but to keep these young people not only in Jerusalem, in Israel. I mean, all young talents here have a lot of difficulty with the cultural world here. It's very difficult. And there's so much offering in Europe and Canada, and we're losing our best girls and boys going there, which is great for those countries. But I think our government should keep them home. And this is one way of doing it. For me, this is Zionism. Okay? So happy to say that only 5 years after we decided we're going into animation, there's studios in Jerusalem. We're doing a Barbie for Mattel. We did the Muppet Babies for Disney. We're doing a lot of Israeli things also for television for, youngsters, but also very art house films that's our neshama, that's our soul. Okay, so we're juggling to build an animation industry. And more studios are being built in Jerusalem, and more people are staying in Jerusalem after they finish Bezalel school because they have jobs here. And one of the great peaks of 7 years of working is Legend of Destruction, Gidi's film. Because I know he also worked on it for 8 years, but to be able to present a film like his, which is not exactly animation, but let's call it from the animation world, on a big screen in Israel, in Jerusalem, with the president of Israel and the prime minister of Israel. And I mean, that tops Cannes and Berlin and the Oscars. That's why we come to work every morning.
That's beautiful. And it's what a wonderful convergence that you and Gidi started working sort of on the same, not the same, but something that was synergistic at the same time. A couple questions before we segue into the clip, the trailer from Gidi's film. When you're selecting what films, I'm sure you must get a lot of interest nationally and probably internationally as well. How do you decide briefly what's worthy and worthy, what you're going to be able to do and want to do? And does your background as a filmmaker surely must play into that?
Yeah. We first choose the most by artistic values, not commercial values and not business-wise. And after we choose the best films, what we think, we have a committee, a public committee that thinks what's good for Jerusalem. I mean, it's pretty hard in art to define what's good for a city, but we have discussions about it, and up to now we had great, success. And after that selection, we come in contact with the producer, and we say, okay, we can support in this amount. What will you spend in Jerusalem? And then we sign a contract and we support. Of course, the large part of the credit goes to the Israeli National Film Funds. I mean, we're new and one small player, but we work together with the funds, and usually they give much more money than we do. So.
Great. So when Gidi, how did you and Gidi connect about Legend of Destruction? What was the mechanism, and did you understand right away that this would be, because it's very different?
I'll say it very short in the Israeli way, and then we'll transfer to Gidi. He sent us the script. I read it. I told everyone around me, this is the best film that this fund will make ever. And he told me that he's going to do it in drawings, in still drawings, 90 minutes. I told him it won't never work, maybe 15 minutes. The crowd today won't be able to sit in front of an oil picture from the Renaissance. And he said, okay, you don't know what you're talking about. And he was correct.
He was correct. And I have to say, when I first saw a couple of paintings, I also thought he's either a visionary, and in fact, he is a visionary. Let's have a thank you, Yoram. We're going to come back to you all in at the end. Let's have a look at the trailer for Legend of Destruction, and then we'll talk with Gidi.
ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
ראה אלוהים, יש כאלו שהולכים על שטיחים של משי, ויש כאלה שנלחמים על הקרעים.
כלב יהודי!
בושה.
לא תחרב ירושלים, אלא בשל שנאת חינם.
אתה תכבוש את ירושלים, אהובי.
הגיע הזמן לעלות על ירושלים.
אין מה למהר. היהודים טובחים אחד בשני, עושים את מלאכתנו קלה.
ריבונו של עולם, אתה שכולך מלא רחמים, זה מה שרצית?
Wow. Wow. Gidi, that's amazing. That's a phenomenal. So Gidi,
yes.
Tell us, what made you decide to make a film, such an epic film about such an incredibly important historical event it's so different from anything that you've made, from anything that I think anybody's made. What made you decide to make this film when you started it 8 years ago?
Well, to be honest, I was pretty ignorant about this subject before I read a book. I mean, we all learn it at school when we were around 16 years old, and most of us forget it all, and that's and then when I was 40, when was it? I mean, actually 8 years ago, I actually read a book about it for the first time, which kind of shocked me that I'm so ignorant. I mean, I knew some things about it, but I wasn't deep in that. And it was actually at the same time there was in Syria there was a civil war going on. Hell broke loose over there, and what I read was just like that, and I was pretty shocked to see, what crazy history we had, which is it's a major moment in the history of the Jews, and in the history of Christianity and of the world. And I decided I'm going to do a movie about it, and as we progressed with the movie through the years, we found out that that Israel became closer and closer to our opinion to the situation that was the evening of the before it all started 2,000 years ago, and we got more and more worried about that because of the hateful discourse and what they call the identity politics. And it became worse and worse, and corruption allegations, and so it became more and more important to create this movie and to see the kind of warning light to the Israeli culture. And and through the years, I became an expert to the subject. So that's how I got into it.
Okay. Fascinating, and we can relate here. Also, you chose to tell this story not from the point of view of one of the big historical figures, but from a protagonist, Ben Batich. I can't quite get that.
Yes.
Ben Batich. If you can explain to us why you chose to do it that way, through his eyes, that would be great.
Yeah. First of all, I would like to say something before, which connects to that, and that is that we have two main sources, historical sources to the story. One of them is Josephus Flavius, a historical book called The War of the Jews. He was a character himself in the events. It's an amazing piece, and which includes a lot of the knowledge that we know about the Judaism today. It comes from this book. The main problem with this book was that the writer, Josephus Flavius himself, was a traitor. He actually worked for the Romans. I mean, he was first a commander in the Galilee of the Jews, and then when he got caught, he defected to the Romans, and he actually wrote this book for the emperors, for the Roman emperors. And then I got exposed more and more to the Talmud. In the Talmud, we have legends of destruction. And the name of the movie stemmed from this. It's like we created one more Talmudic legend. And the character of Ben Batir is a small character in the legend of the destruction. He is considered to be the one who burned down the food of Jerusalem. He was a zealot. He became a zealot. And he ended up regretting what he did and saving his uncle, the sage, Hanan ben Zakkai, and which ended up in leaving the city and creating the Talmud. But there are many, we have like 6 characters in the movie, which are the main characters. And all of them beside him are representing a certain kind of political or cultural perspective. They are all well-known figures, like Rabbi Ben Zakkai, we have the rebel Bar Giora, we have the rebel John of Giscala, we have the Queen Bernice. Now what defines them is that each one of them has a perspective, a political perspective, which is steady. It's not changing through the movie. They have their own concept and they don't change it. Now, this doesn't work very well in drama, because drama needs the main character, the hero, to go through something and to change. And it took us a while to understand that he should be, this side character should be the main character, because he's not steady, because he's young and confused, because he's an idealistic guy who doesn't know exactly what he's doing and leading this whole story to disaster, to catastrophe, and then changes his mind and going through a dramatic process. And that's what drama needs. So it took me a year or two to understand that he should be my main character. And we started actually a story of a city going mad. It still is a story, but then he is the main character now, leading the story and taking the blame upon himself, although he's not the only one to be blamed, because all the characters in the movie are to be blamed. They are all to be blamed in this story.
Well, it's
the results of this story.
Yes, that's a fascinating insight, and it makes sense. It gives the audience also somebody they can travel with through the film.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you decide to do this in animation, and where in the world did you come up with this beautiful concept that works, that didn't seem apparent to those of us who couldn't see it right away, that it would work, but it does work. How did you decide to do it as animation?
First of all, I got to say, I remember saying to Yoram, he doesn't know what he's doing. When I'm kind of, now I can say it, but first of all, necessity is the mother of invention, and creating an animated movie or a live action movie at this scale would have cost $100-200 million, which is something it's a big part of the budget of the IDF, to do something like this. It's not like something we can afford, so we had to go somewhere else. And then it occurred to me to try to do that, and it was very frightening. It's not that I was sure it's going to work, and I was hoping it's going to work, and we kind of dived into it, in a suicide mission. And we first, and then I said, okay, I got to find the right painters to do that, and this was a problem as well. And then I called David Polonsky, which I actually didn't know at the time. We knew of each other, and he's a great master. And I actually called to consult with him if he would, what do you think, who could do it? So, and I called him and I explained the idea, and then he said, okay, I'll do it. I wasn't even calling him to do it, and so it was like, okay. And then he said, I'm going to bring my friend over, which is as great as he is. And we started playing with this game, and we made some sketches and made some scene, 1 minute scene, and we looked at it, and surprisingly enough, it worked. But we said, okay, but 1 minute is not a good enough. We can't know by 1 minute. So we made 10 minutes, and which took us a while to do, and also worked. We showed it to some people, it worked, but then it said 10 minutes is not enough. Okay, so we made 30 minutes, which took us that's a year and a half or two to get there. And this also worked. So we said, okay, it's going to work. So, and I think, if you think about movies in general, movies are all an illusion of movement. there is no real movement in movies. It's 24 frames per second, but each frame is still. And we complement the gap. We don't really see movement, we just imagine the movement. So we said, let's go a few steps ahead and really show the audience that he can do this work also when it's all stills. And from what I understand from the people who see it, I'm talking about a lot of people by now, it takes a few minutes to get in the game, to really accept this draconic contract that I'm writing with the signing with the audience. And then you feel it moves. And you feel that, and you can supplement the movement by yourself. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. And this gap between the frames, between the shots, and between your imagination is actually something that sometimes create more emotions and more authenticity than regular animation. And it did work like that. And I think and also you can get to a level of paintings which you cannot do it in regular animation, no matter how big the budget is. It's simply impossible to move something like that. And for a whole movie. And the beauty of the frames that David and Michael did is they also got the Ophir Prize for that, like Jonathan over here. And they were my painters, but they also were like my cameraman and my and lighting man, art, dressing, everything. They were and the actors. We had the voices of some of the great stars, biggest actors in Israel, but they were just half of it because you have the emotions through the paintings. And one last thing I can say about it is, that history, until maybe 120 years ago, maybe 150 years ago, or 200 years ago, was portrayed by paintings. Not only that, most of the painting of the history were done by the church for 1500 years and developed through the history of painting is history of Christianity in many ways, and most of the painting they did were of Jesus, and that's exactly the same place and the same time of my movie. The Jerusalem 33, and we are talking about Jerusalem 66, 70. So it seemed appropriate to do it this way.
As it turned out, yes, Gidi, you saw that, and that's really wonderful. The artists, I read an interview where they absolutely give you credit for being so visionary about the art style of.
But I got to be honest, sometimes you just you close your eyes and you go forward. And you're not sure about anything. It's not like I had this vision very, very clear and I knew exactly what I'm doing. It wasn't like that. I was just...
For young filmmakers, you have to trust your instincts and give it, and if it works, then that's wonderful.
As long as it works.
It did work. and it seems to me, and then I want to go to speak with Jonathan about the score. But one quick question. Had you written the entire script when you hired the artists, or did
no.
you? Okay.
No, the process was very different than what I'm used to. I'm doing live actions. It's my first animated movie.
Right.
And normally in films, you write a script. It takes you a year or two, and then you look for the money, and then you pre-produce, you produce, you post-produce, you edit, you do the music, you do everything, and then you finish the movie. Here it was really crazy process. You write some, you paint some, you edit, you back to painting, back to recording, back to writing. And it's an ongoing process, a never-ending, very specific process of 8 years for me, 7 years for the painters. Jonathan, how much you work? You work like a year yourself on the project, maybe a bit less?
6 months.
6 months.
6
okay.
months.
We are.
And I gotta say about Jonathan and Asaf Talmudi, his partner, that one of the things I was really afraid of, we had a marvelous guide track we used, and I was really afraid that I won't be able to make it, in music. There would be disappointment. You know, it seemed impossible. And the result of hard work was far better than the guide track and was amazing. And you can all hear the soundtrack on the network and on the internet. It's amazing piece of work. I mean, he won't say this about himself. He's a very modest guy. But what they did with the score, the regular score, and the music that we did for the temple, the choirs of the temple which was total imagination of what we believe would have been the music of the temple. So they did an unbelievable work.
They did, and let's have a look now at the production clip that shows part of that before we get to Jonathan, because alas, our time is starting to get.
Okay, sure.
ריבונו של עולם, אני עבדך הנאמן.
That just blows me away every time. Jonathan,
Hi.
Mazel tov. You and Asaf Talmudi absolutely earned that Ophir for the music. That is astonishingly good. I had a couple of questions I was going to ask you that sort of have already been answered, but one of them was, did you score the film to picture, or was the music ongoing? And as I can tell from the answer, I think, from Gidi, it was sort of a back and forth process. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it definitely was a back and forth process. It was sort of like a triangle with going back and forth between Asaf and myself, Gidi and myself, Asaf and Gidi, like complementing each other with the picture the whole time.
When you communicate with Gidi in particular, and maybe also in other situations when you're working with the director, do you communicate in musical terms or in emotional terms? Does the director say, make us feel this, or does the director say, do this in D minor or whatever?
In our case, Gidi is also a musician, so it was easy for him to communicate. He often would tell us, I want an F sharp here and not a G. So that's very good for me. I like that as a musician, but sometimes you just have to interpret the emotion that the director wants. And that also happened here many times. It would just tell us the sort of atmosphere or emotion he's trying to get, and we would just have to work our asses off to find that.
How did you two work together? It's not that common, I think, for two composers to co-compose, and it certainly worked beautifully. Did one of you write one piece and the other, or did you co-write, or was it a combination?
First of all, the internet was a very important tool here because most of it happened during the lockdowns, the COVID lockdowns. So we would just send each other stuff back and forth. Usually Gidi and Asaf would meet and just lay down the fundamental elements for each scene, most of the scenes. Then I just go over them and just build on top of them and make them more, I don't know, just deeper and just bring it to life, sort of, from sketches. And often we would just each write his own scene. Like Asaf was mostly in charge of the choral works, the temple scenes, and I was often in charge of the bigger orchestral scenes. And of course, we kept working with each other's ideas and adding on top.
How did you decide on your instrumentation? And this is my last joint question because we have to get to audience questions, but how did you decide on instrumentation? And is it different to write a score for an animated film? And does that affect your choices?
I think in animation you have more freedom and you can go further. I think especially in a film like that where the music takes a big role. So we had lots of space to go wild. And I think the main elements in the soundtrack is, first of all, orchestral, Hollywood big scenes and Oriental instruments, not necessarily from the Middle East, but mainly from the Middle East. But so we looked for this combination that would not sound definitive. Like there's Africa and Asia and Australia, instruments from all over, but mainly orchestral and Middle Eastern instruments, and of course the choirs. And there's touches of electronica and samples and weird experimental things that come and go. So that ties up the whole thing together.
Well, it's an astonishingly good score, and I cannot wait to hear the whole thing. It just really, it's Mazel Tov. It's beautiful. And
thank you so much.
I just want to add that one of the most beautiful things about this team, Yonatan Asaf, is to see how little ego they had. None of them were, they didn't step on each other's foot, and they were like really working together like one person, which is amazing to see. It's rare.
It really is. It certainly worked, whatever they were doing, and
yes.
Wise of you to choose them. So, Gidi, that was congratulations.
That's one of my smartest choices, and I think Yonatan is on the way to Hollywood. I hope he's going to be able to work with me on the next one because we're going to become too expensive now. I won't be able to afford it.
I want you to stay in Israel, Yonatan. Okay, thank you guys. That was just wonderful. And Wayne, I know that you're ready to start with the audience questions. Is that
well? We've got tons of technical questions, but before I start with those, the comments coming in from viewers around the world: amazed, mesmerized, bursting with pride. I know you got your trophies last week, but nobody here has seen it yet. And the most we're so grateful to have a peek at what you've created. It is really an incredible work of art that we know is going to resonate with so many different audiences. So Saul in Canada and Steve in the United States want to know, when can we see it? Gidi, anything you can share?
Well, we're working on that right now, and I can't say a lot because it's still, under the radar and a bit secret. But I hope that in a while, not too long from now, we'll be able to see it in the United States and Canada, North America. Great. That's our first, first target is to get there, to get to America.
So Gidi, you shared that you're new to animation. You've done lots of film work before this. There is, in looking at those amazing scenes, which give so much emotion and so much history that you took on. Explain to us a little about how it works with the soft. One of our questions is about how does that software work? Animation has changed from people just drawing things Disney style, and now has this technology behind it. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Well, actually, it was all painted on Photoshop. They have there is David and Michael are in the same studio side by side. Each one of them have a Macintosh with Photoshop, and there are such big talents that they can make it look like oil paintings. And but that's they simply have a great technique in that and a lot of knowledge of how to do it. So they can make it look like that and like a real, Goya painting or stuff like that. But that's, simple Photoshop, basically.
Wow. Yoram, one of the questions that one of the viewers asked about is, given that you're sitting in Jerusalem and surrounded by computer-generated animation experts and software, that is there a match there? But it sounds like from what Gidi said, it's those creative art folks at Bezalel, those Bezalel grads and people in other mediums that are driving this new piece. So how much of it is technology and how much it is just, as Gidi described earlier, just sort of necessity created innovation here? And this was about finding, great artists.
This is why animation is so typical for Israelis, because it combines tech and design and storytelling, and we're very good at all of them. But and usually in cinema, it's usually storytelling and less tech, a lot of professionals, but not high tech. And here in Jerusalem, we're combining between the Hebrew University computer science, which are geniuses and snatched all over the world, with Bezalel art students. They have to learn together. And from the two, sides of the brain, these people come out with crazy things, both in art and both in tech solutions that the art people brought the tech people. So we're doing exactly that.
Well, the other component that is so you take the technology, you take the art, and then Yonatan, you and your team come up with this amazing soundtrack. I have to tell you, when Wendy first shared that clip, I was sort of reminded of early Shlomo Gronich takes with choirs of children and singing about pieces that are really an important part of Israel's history. This seems like an enabler, making history come alive in a way. And I understand from what I read, at least in the New York Times and the other pieces, that some of the instruments that you used in this film are actually authentic to the period of the destruction of the Second Temple.
Sort of, as far as we can tell. I mean, kanun and oud and zona, they're all very old instruments. I'm not sure exactly if they had been in that version in that time, but it's definitely the sound of old Jerusalem.
What other kinds of, I guess I want to ask to each of you just real quickly, we're coming up on the top of the hour. What are the kinds of projects that you're working on now that you think will build on this sort of newfound attention that you're getting from taking some risks. I mean, Gidi, you've been working on this thing for 8 years. I can only imagine, what it means now to get the kind of spotlight on this particular project. So where do you see going from here? And Yoram, last time we talked, you had Netflix on the other line, and I assume that was not because you had a subscription issue. So give us on 1 minute each, just on the project you're working on that you see going forward.
20 seconds. Another thing about Gidi's film is that it brought together into cinemas people from Mea Shearim and Bnei Brak, ultra-religious people, and secularists from Tel Aviv, and they both were amazed from the film. I mean, it's a phenomenon, this film. Okay, so today we announced the first international workshop with HBO and Netflix coming over to Jerusalem and tutoring our talents to start exporting Israeli content all over the world. And Israeli content, and they're coming over, and it's like a direct contact between Israelis, and this is our aim as a fund to help local creators.
Fantastic. I hope that wasn't HBO on the line. Gidi, what's coming up next?
Coming up next is I'm done for a while with animation. And my plan is to do the next one in 1 year, to finish it. I'm becoming old by the films. I have to make it shorter. And next one on the line is another film, live action, which probably takes place in Jerusalem as well, with Shuli Rand, my partner for Ushpizin and for this one. And it's not like Ushpizin exactly, but it's kind of a dark comedy, Hasidic dark comedy about acting and about it's called the Badchan, but we'll get there.
Well, I love Ushpizin, and I'm greatly looking forward first to seeing Legends of Destruction, but then your next work, Yonatan, for a jazz musician to be in France playing that sort of like a dream gig. So. Tell us a little about the tour and what you see working on when you return.
With an amazing band called Big Fishes, led by the unbelievable trumpet player Avishai Cohen. And once I get back, as far as music for film, there's nothing planned, but I have a couple of albums I've been working on with some of my bands that are coming out in the next month. So expect new music soon.
Wendy, you get the last word for putting together this amazing panel of what a collaborative artistic team. And I know all these different elements are worthy of their own discussion. But tell us a little bit, just in the last minute, about some of the future things that we have to look forward to with Backstory.
First of all, thank you guys. You're all so talented. It's just incredible. There's so much creative energy in Jerusalem, and Yoram, you are channeling it. We are continuing to do a virtual programming. As I mentioned earlier, we created this program where music students in Israel are writing scores for film students in the U.S. We'd also like to see the reverse happen. I think we can make that happen. And we also have been showcasing Israeli student films and then having people who are quite successful in the field here discuss those with the students. And that's been wonderful. But I think I'd also like now to add Israeli professionals to discuss American and Israeli student films, because you guys are really unbelievably talented. I love having the opportunity to put together people who are so smart and who really are able to see where things could go, and in this case, to make them go where they wanted them to go, and just to put together a phenomenal team. Gidi, is what you did, and you've been making things happen in Jerusalem for a while, and you just keep on doing it. So that's great, and please let us in soon, because we have a lot of people who want to come to Israel and meet you guys, and hurry up.
Looks like Yoram's ready to receive everybody.
Anyone who in the audience who is in Jerusalem can text us, can email me, and we can meet. And if you have ideas, we'd love to share.
Yoram is giving money away. Whoever comes is giving money.
Also,
Well,
Just call him and you get the money. That's not a problem.
when you see all of the creativity and innovation that is coming out of Jerusalem today, it leads some people to wonder: would Ben Gurion recognize the sort of innovation in the Israel that was created that we're celebrating now 73 years later? And my personal answer is yes, he would absolutely recognize this, and he'd be excelling. But don't take my word for it. This coming week, we have a webinar about Ben Gurion, and from two people working in the Negev and in Israel in the Ben Gurion houses. We'll take you on a virtual tour, and we will go inside Ben Gurion, inside his head, inside his house, inside the safe that he had kept by his bed, inside his bookshelves, inside the desk. And you get to learn a little bit about Ben Gurion with two wonderful madrachim who are going to take us on a virtual tour. We're not able to all come yet. We're all, waiting to get on those new flights, and we'll be there soon. In the meantime, keep check in with us twice a week. We bring you the best and most interesting things from Israel here at America-Israel Friendship League. We got a lot to celebrate here this year in our 50-year anniversary. So stay with us and tell your friends, because there's more to come. Thanks, everybody. Au revoir.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
See you later.
thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Are we still on air in public?
No.
Well, that was great, guys.
That was fun.
That was wonderful.
Thanks for doing it, everybody.
I think people enjoyed the show, right? I mean, good reactions on the side, in the chats.
It's great. We'll follow up afterwards. All the best.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.